how I would generate ideas, actually that I still prefer to use the Bamboo Innovators framework as a guiding North Star, hopefully to guide value investors in the next decade for Asia. Because now Asia has developed companies and business models, have the ones that are focused so far, not going to property development projects, distraction, temptations, contentment. So these companies, the true compounders, they have gotten stronger over time. So the bar has been raised in Asia for stock picking. In fact, it's the best time in Asia for stock picking, where a rising tide no longer lifts all boats. So companies and businessmen that were distracted in the past 5 years in property or side deals, rather than building their core business, they will be left further and further behind. So cheap gets cheaper. So that's the dilemma. So you can't say, oh, the rising tide of Asia, interest allocation is coming from the West, from within Asia itself. So every company, especially the cheap ones, the battered ones, just buy them. They will just rise, just like that, without regards to the business model analysis, without regards to the resilience of the family business owner intention, motivation, and aspiration. So that requires you to have this accumulated know-how over the years to follow them, monitor them, to see which are the real serious operators who have been dedicated, focused, serious, and persevering in building their business. So as I mentioned earlier, the blunt tool is required first to screen out all the toxic factors, so that there actually is a 20 to 50 a list of criteria that I normally employ. So it's very blunt, the usual like high leverage stuff. Because high leverage, why? Because if, let's say, as from the experience in the Asian financial crisis in 97, 98, a lot of the companies, they just default on the debt as the Asian currency devalues significantly. So they were borrowing US dollar debt, which became so expensive because Asian currencies devalued. So they simply walk away from their debt situation. And why are they able to do that? Because, again, as I mentioned, it's the corporate structure, the pyramid structure. Because that particular company, that listed company that you invest in, it belongs down at the bottom of the pyramid. So the holding company, they can walk away free by just severing the ties to this bottom of the pyramid companies. So a lot of Indonesian, Thai companies, ASEAN-related companies, they just simply walk away from the debt. They default just like that. And I think Wall Street Journal and all these Financial Times, they reported quite extensively during that period how investors from the West, they tried to seek legal recourse for their both equity and the so-called senior debt, secured debt, but they just couldn't have any resolvement. So that's a big risk. So after using this blunt tool, 20 to 50 criteria, now you have to go through the hard work that Buffett say, A to Z. Understand their business model, understand their resilience, the RES framework, the rootedness in the culture of decentralization, whether do they foster creativity and innovations in the company at the frontline level. Because a lot of Asian companies, now it's very popular to say teamwork. So teamwork is a very popular term now in Asian companies. But the misconception about teamwork is they believe teamwork is about getting a few important key players, deal makers. So these deal makers, they employ, and so the founder will employ these deal makers, and then these deal makers will go and use their so-called pedigree to get sales, to get contracts, and then they execute these sales based on what the rainmakers and dealmakers bring into the company. But that's not teamwork. Teamwork is really about how everyone in the company are able to really beat together as one heartbeat. You know, everyone is just like the McDonald's case that I mentioned earlier. Ideas and innovations bubble up from below, say from the franchisee level, from the manager level, the frontline people, like the McNuggets or Filet-O-Fish, you know, that can be cascaded, that can be so-called deployed throughout the organization. They're scalable. So that's the R part, the rootedness. So E is the emptiness. That's very, it comes from perhaps experience. So you have to see whether a company has an intangible know-how. So actually it's quite easy to see whether a company has intangible know-how. Say, like for instance, that one of the company that I mentioned, the Heinz of Japan, which is Kewpie, eggs and drugs couldn't be more different. But yet it stems from an intangible know-how from handling eggs. So they are able to process egg into a certain acid. So this acid is used for medical treatment in dry eyes, in your osteoporosis. So this is deep intangible know-how that if you are distracted by property development or doing other things by the sideline, you can never develop this deep intangible know-how. So that's easy to filter out if you are a curious and hardworking and dedicated value investor. So the S part is the chef leadership. So that's also very critical because in Asian companies, especially as they transition from founder-led to the second generation or professionally run, they still have this command and control mindset, and they believe teamwork and to professionalize a company is about hiring high-profile people, the rainmakers, the deal-makers, who have experience, and they are able to bring in sales, and it's all about execution, you know, at the ground level. So it's, if you were to approach in that manner, as they scale up bigger and bigger in terms of their order book or the projects that they're going to execute, they can't do so. So maybe I'll just cite another example, like for instance, in America, everyone is familiar with Ecolab. Ecolab actually acquired a Buffett invested company called Nelco, the water treatment technology company. So Ecolab is able to scale up based on deep rootedness and emptiness. Why do I say that? Because it's not about getting a few deal makers or rainmakers or teamwork in the traditional Asian sense, but the sales force, the frontline people, they actually have deep know-how about the problems, let's say in a kitchen, industrial kitchen. So they're able to know, okay, not just the detergent, but maybe a whole set of the kitchen solution that they are able to implement for them. So it's deep know-how that cannot be obtained from deal makers or rainmakers. So in Japan, for instance, in a very, very unusual company, in a manufacturing obsessive Japan, right? It's Keeans. So Keeans, the market cap is about 18 billion, 16 to 18 billion US dollar, but it only has 3,000 employees. So if you compare that to another fantastic Japan company called Nidec, which commands about 80% market share or more globally in the micro motor in hard disk drive. So Nidec is a 100,000 strong employee company, manufacturing champion, 80% market share globally, but its market cap is half that of a solution service-based Keeans. So that contrast couldn't be greater. So what Keans do is, for instance, at an instant noodle factory, let's say at Nissin, they would, one of the 3,000 so-called frontline people, they would just sit there in the factory of the instant noodle and observe, okay, so what's wrong, what solution can I provide? So what they do is, the product that they sell, laser sensor product, they only have less than 1% market share globally. Compare that to NIDAC, right? 80% market share. So naturally, 1% global market share, what kind of mode is that? It's ridiculous, right? But when they observe in an instant noodle factory, they are able to see, okay, is the noodle fat, thin, uneven? So they will see, okay, a laser sensor product customized for this customer is able to produce, to help them to produce noodles that are consistently thick, up to 0.1 millimeter, so that when the consumer eat your instant noodle, the Nissin one, oh, it's springy, it's consistent, it's nice. It's not like, oh, one strand is thick, the other strand is thin. So this innovation at the front line, not just amongst teamwork at the deal maker, ring maker, amongst a few selected people. So that allowed them to scale up in a sustainable way.